Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Spoiler Force Podcast. You can find more episodes on any major podcasting platform such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, and even on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure to follow and like Spoiler Force Podcast on Facebook.
Hey, this is Puzzled Minds Podcast, and you're listening to Spoiler Force Podcast.
Alright, so this is episode 58 of Spoiler Force Podcast. My name is Ricky, and thank you for tuning in. So I am back from my 2-week break. Happy Independence Day to anyone who's listening. The guest I have this week is another podcast group that I'm extremely excited to have. We were able to link up and collaborate together within less than 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm very excited to have them on here. And it's not just one guest or two, but I have 3 guests on this episode. So let me introduce you guys to the Puzzled Minds podcast. Thank you guys for being on the podcast here.
Thank you, Ricky, for having us.
Yeah, so I wanted to let fans know like how I got to know about your podcast. So on Facebook, there's like various groups of different podcasting pages and all like pretty much all these different groups that are and pages that are just posting up their content. And I don't know, I think maybe it was your guys' your logo or the thumbnail you guys use for your podcast, and that kind of just caught my eye. And so I kind of looked into it. I like the whole idea of how you guys are talking about like 2 a.m. thoughts and just various topics and whatnot. And I think at the time, the episode that came out was your relationships topic. And that really just caught my attention. I liked how all 3 of you just kind of just, talked about this topic here and gave you guys' thoughts. But yeah, and to let fans know as well, how did you guys start your podcast?
Our logo, I think, is at first I was just like, I was kind of hesitant about it, but the more and more I looked at it and more I posted it, I was like, damn, this is pretty, not, I don't want to say attractive, but it's very eye-catching, I guess. And so I hope that was, the what caught your eye, the logo that we have.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like especially like all the like almost kind of like graffiti kind of style. That's what kind of caught my attention, especially. Like,
Yeah, definitely. Today will probably has a better explanation of how we started this conversation. Because whenever I tell it, it doesn't really work out that well. But
when we started the logo?
no. The how we started the podcast.
Oh yeah, well the podcast kind of it's just every single time John and I talked previously, like we'd always catch up, after maybe like a couple of weeks of not talking, right? Just saying what's up, and no matter without fail, we'd always end up on a random topic. Like I always describe it as like I don't know if you guys have seen that cartoon, The Regular Show. It ended like a couple years ago, but it always would start off with something very basic, and then by the end of that episode, all this dramatic shit would have happened. So our conversation would kind of take the same turn where we talk about something very basic, like, we were talking about like, oh, did you hear about like, I don't know, this new Kanye song? And then we end up talking about, do you think aliens would come and try to breed with humans? Like it would be so damn random, but it would just kind of like escalate in a very organic way. We're just like, you know what, we should actually record this. So it's kind of like a very, I guess, linear origin story, but here we are.
and Emily, how are you with the podcast as well? I think you're the director, I guess, for the podcast.
I wouldn't say the director. um, all I've really done is take on some of the communication, like the busyness, take something off the plate for them. But no, I don't really do much.
Oh, okay.
But I was involved from John, and I think when he was recording his intro episode, I had invited John and his wife over to hang out at my place, and I think that his wife was like, John, we have to go. So John was doing that because my boyfriend was playing video games. He had us listen to it, and I was just really interested. So I've listened to every episode. I don't know, I'm a big supporter of supporting friends. So I thought it was really interesting, and I actually enjoy it. And they asked me to be on, and I was so excited. I told John probably like 15 times, I'm famous now.
Yeah, we try to touch on a lot of random things, and for those that don't really know, how we choose our topics is kind of based on the alphabet. So we pick an alphabet letter and then kind of go with that topic. So last episode that we just dropped was on lost civilization, so we picked L for that. And we just kind of work with whatever letter that we choose, and there's something for everyone. We have a food delicacy one, we have an AI one, we have a like an evolution one, like whatever you want, we'll eventually get to it.
Yeah, I think that's what I kind of liked about your guys' podcast too, the variety of different topics, and it wasn't just one thing. Because I just listened to the most recent one today when I was at work. So from just things about like aliens to civilizations to like the main topic of this episode, relationships. I kind of like that idea, and I kind of just resonated with it because with my podcast, it's somewhat similar too, just having a variety of different people and just talking about different things, and to keep the audience engaged instead of just keeping it one consistent topic throughout each episode or the next episode too.
I totally agree with what you're saying. I think engaged is the key word there, because there's something for everyone. Like every episode is so different, and that's why I've been so engaged. I'm so into it. There's something different for everyone, and if one episode's not your thing, you listen to them and you'll come around because they'll get into something else. Like how they said their conversations just go wherever.
Anything that you can think of, we could be talking about ants one day. I don't know, we probably won't do ants, but just anything that you can think of.
We'll eventually get to it.
Yeah, we'll eventually get. I don't know why I keep repeating myself, but yeah, we will.
Like I've said, I really like this topic you guys talked about on your podcast about relationships, or relationships as you guys called it. This was a topic that I was trying to do myself on my own podcast, which is completely out of the norm, because usually I talk about like a lot of nerdy things or have musicians on my podcast and whatnot. So this whole relationship topic and idea of it was hard to find a guest, and it kind of just fell together. Once I listened to your guys' podcast, I shot you guys the message, and then it just worked out easily. So again, I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to have you guys on and doing this collaboration. For the listeners, take a listen to that episode for sure. I'll have like all the links and everything in the descriptions too. But I did like all of your guys' input and different views and aspects on this too. And before we actually agreed to all of this too, I sent you guys a link about a video from the film Her by Spike Jonze. Have you guys seen that movie at all?
No. I personally haven't.
Watched the video.
Okay, so I'll give a brief explanation of what that film's about to the listeners as well if they haven't seen it. Her by Spike Jonze is just a I guess a film about like someone who's using AI and kind of like it's a futuristic kind of setting, and the main character Theodore Twombly, who's portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix, just goes.
Who that is? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. He looks really familiar, but I didn't know who it was.
Yeah. Joaquin Phoenix is a chameleon.
Yeah, the film itself, the story and like what the meanings of the film like are really eye catching, and it's a lot of people will think it like the general public will think it's kind of weird because he's talking to an AI the whole time, and it's not just a standard AI. The character itself is an evolving AI, which is voiced by Scarlett Johansson. So they're just talking, and the relationship grows and stuff like that, and it's just kind of goes along with your guys' topic with your podcast about like the evolution of relationships, of how it could change in the future and how it's changing even now with like social media and the internet. And I had you guys watch that video. It's about like 15 minutes or so. The audience, they can check that out too. I'll have the link in the descriptions too. But Spike Jonze just had like a bunch of various different artists or people on like the film set and whatnot talk about relationships and how they're changing. And I think that with relationships today, especially with social media too and the internet, it's completely different from how it was compared to like the mid 1990s to early 2000s. Everyone knows everyone now on the internet. It's not like if you don't know anybody, you can just kind of look them up by their profile photo and kind of guess who they are. And if people don't keep their things private and whatnot, so you can still look at what they like and learn about them. And I think with how dating and relationships have been changing, people themselves are changing too now. I recently had an incident where someone messaged me on Facebook, and I don't know if it was a catfish or not, but I automatically thought of that. And if it wasn't a catfish, then I'm sorry to the girl who messaged me, but she was like, this is awkward for me, but I wanted to say, like, I think you're handsome and whatnot. And my mind just went straight to the gutter. I'm like, yeah, you're a catfish. Stop messing with me. And then the reply was, she was pissed. She was like, don't you fucking call me a catfish. I don't look like a catfish and whatnot. It was just, it was so crazy. And
Ricky, you're famous, man. What are you talking about?
Would have been a cat. You picked you found the one non-catfish, because typically that sounds like a catfish message.
But even if it is a catfish, of course they're gonna say I'm not a catfish. Obviously.
It's just like it's just how she sent the message too, because she was like, this is different for me or awkward for me, and I just think that you're handsome, and I wanted to friend request you and whatnot, and I'm just like, no one introduces themselves like that. even if you're DMing someone, it was, to me, I don't know. I read it and it was just so awkward to me, and so I automatically thought like, yeah, you're a catfish. Stop fucking with me. And that person, whoever, if they were a catfish or not, they were upset. It was just crazy.
You should have asked for a spoon pic. If it was real.
What I'm wondering is, if this is so awkward for her, like, did you get that burst of confidence to like friend request and message them? Like, is it really that awkward for you?
Or the burst of confidence was to send a message and then the meter ran out, apparently.
Running on E.
Exactly. Just sent the message and it's like, oh, and confidence gone.
Yeah, like with how people just interact in general now, like it's really it's weird now, because it's like it's reversed. Before, it used to not be creepy to like approach people in person, and then now it is. Like, people get so weirded out by it when you just go up to them like, hey, and then whoever you're talking to, like, they'll either ignore you or just like flip out.
Yeah, that is true. Nowadays, I think we're decent. We have less social skills now because everyone's pretty much a keyboard warrior. Like, remember back in the day, like, actually meeting a stranger meant you met them like in a setting and you didn't know anything about them. Like, you were talking about doing research behind people before you even get to know them. That was not a thing before. If I wanted to know what your favorite color was, I would have to ask you in person. Now you can literally go on, Facebook likes and see what this person's interests are. So the need to actually ask the person these questions is kind of gone now, and I think it's killed the ability to actually have conversations. So, like, I remember, I'm a big person. I like calling people. That's weird nowadays. Like, using a phone that was specifically designed to call people is now weird. It's either text or, even ringing if you go to pick somebody up, you don't ring their doorbell anymore. You text them, I'm outside. Like, all those little interactions now are so odd to the point where, yeah, I mean, you're 100% correct. I don't know where we're going, but a lot of things that used to be okay are taboo now.
Yeah, and that video that you showed us to watch, they had said something. I can't remember who it was. They said tech obliterated boundaries, and we're unified and accessible in a way we haven't been before. And so that's kind of like how we had mentioned on our episode about how everything is on social media. You can find anything and everything about someone just with a click. And I mean, it is a part of the fact that everyone puts their best foot forward on social media. So you have everything, everything that's desirable, I guess, or whatever they like is on there. So you don't have to do any research. And, like you had mentioned before, that maybe even 20 years ago, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago, you couldn't do that. You literally had to have a physical contact and physical interaction with someone to get to know someone. And I don't know if we've reversed the steps in the sense of first we know about everyone and then we have the social interaction.
You're 100% right. That's what happened. We do it in reverse. It's a good way of saying it.
I also think that it's to a point where if you can't find that information through like a quick profile check or some simple research, that a lot of people just lose interest. Like, if someone's profile is private, it's like, all right, well, that's as far as I can get. And they're not going to go ask them. They're not going to reach out to them. They're just going to be like, all right, I know what I know, and that's all I have, because this is how we communicate. This is how I learn about people.
But do you think that private profiles make you more desirable or less? Because you don't know, it's kind of like the quote forbidden fruit. Like, you don't know what's behind the curtain. So do you poke at the curtain, or are you just like, whatever, it's too much effort?
So I feel like if someone's private, it's like they're hiding something. They want to be private. Like, they only want their friends or their people who they're close to see their profile. And I know that's not always the reality, I feel like if I request someone like that, it almost makes me nervous and it makes it not desirable. Like every time I come across one who I'm trying to like get the scoop on and I realize they're private, I'm like, they're so annoying. Because it shouldn't be a problem for me anyway, because if I follow them, they're gonna get the notification that I followed them. It's no different. It's just a matter of asking if you can follow versus just doing it.
Well, social media etiquette is something that is been created because without social media, there's no etiquette. Because before that was not it. Before it was more to show things like if you weren't there, I would go on Facebook to post a photo, but look at my vacation for people that weren't there. But now all these rules and regulations that have happened with social media, that's something we entirely created, which is very odd, and I think that also takes away from people's wanting to communicate because because they're like you said, for example, like if you follow someone on social media, most of the time you don't really interact with that person that much. So you can see everything they're doing. You don't need to pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" You know. So all these things that I've created now have kind of like it's completely twisted and almost distorted what we view as interaction nowadays.
So,
You're
so
right. And when I think about that, people like the number, I don't even know how many people I follow on Instagram. And I'm not going to take the time to check. But I would never call every single one of those people to check on what they're doing. Like, I do not care. Oh, it kind of pointless.
So
God.
when you mention social media etiquette, so when you think about it in the sense of when if you go back on someone's profile like to their very very first picture, like something they posted like maybe 5 years ago, why is that like frowned upon and looked as creepy as opposed to if someone were to show you a picture of them 10 years ago, like a physical copy, and you say, "Oh, I like it," it's not, you know? Is it because you had to actively look for it versus someone presenting an old picture from themselves?
When
Like
you
where,
mention that, John, it's funny how like it's weird when you go and look through like people's old photos and stuff on social media now too.
yeah.
Like you accidentally like someone's picture from like 2012 and it's considered yeah, like it's almost like stalking kind of.
Yeah. And but it's
Well,
weird though
how I
because that's the
combat
whole
that?
point.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're good. I guess like isn't that the whole point of you posting it so people can look through like your pictures. So why is it if it's not within the recent quote, then it's considered like creepy? Not that.
Well,
I
well, it's
agree and
because
I disagree because, like I mentioned on the episode that I did with you guys, that I keep my photos on Instagram as like a personal album that I look back at. It doesn't really matter to me if other people look at it because people probably won't be able to make sense of the random things that I've posted. But I also go back through other people's Instagrams. The only thing is, I'm very like I combat accidentally liking old photos by just going for it and totally owning it. So like I don't go back and accidentally like an old photo. I start at the beginning and the photos that I like as I'm scrolling through their profile, I like them. So that they know from like all on the table, I'm scrolling through your profile right now.
yeah, I mean that's the whole purpose of the social media outlet. It's because there is like this thing that started I don't know even when where we want to know about people, but we don't want them to know that we're interested in their life. I think it's more an ego based thing. Like I rather than me, like for example, like if I don't, let's say I want to know what John's doing right now. Is it weird to call him, but hey man, what are you doing right now? Or hey man, I see that you're at a bar or something. I rather just peep like, oh, I see on his Instagram story he's at this place. Cool. Now there's no need for me to call John to see what he's going on to what he's doing. But for some reason, we don't want each other to know that we know what each other are doing, and that came out of nowhere. I don't know what it is. That I don't know when it started or how it started, but that's primarily what it's based on. It's like I don't want you to know that I know what's going on in your life. It's a very weird thing because maybe it feels like maybe people feel like they don't have lives if they know what's going on in other people's lives.
Yeah, I think that's a big issue too. Like I'm guilty of that too. Like I'll see like my friends check in somewhere, and I have to play like dumb. Like, hey, where are you guys at? When I clearly saw what they posted. Like, oh yeah, they're at this place. I still have to ask them and just be like, oh, you guys are at this place now. Like, I don't know. Like, I think that this transition of like just knowing where everyone's at all times, it's like borderline like breaking boundaries, and it's people. I think people overall are still kind of weirded by that, knowing that people are seeing where you're at, and not just that. Like, a lot of people think that government or FBI people are looking at them too. So like they have like this, they feel like there's like someone who's looking over their shoulder all the time.
The whole thing of just calling someone and be like, hey, what are you doing? Like maybe that's what we need to go back to. I don't know. I'm not saying that like social media is bad, but again, this kind of goes back to the whole thing of something that they had said, like everyone's definition of love is different. So, whether technology helps or hinders you kind of depends on how you define that.
Yeah, very true. I think it's information overload also as well too. Like there's certain things I don't have to know, but we live in a society where everything is done in excess, whether it's Netflix and way too many options or 15 different TV shows coming out every week. I can't keep up with TV shows nowadays. Or all these social media apps that are coming out for every basic thing. Like you have social media apps that are like subgroups of each one. Like you had Facebook, right, which is you post pictures and statuses. Then you had Twitter, which is pretty much just statuses. Then you had Instagram, which is just pictures. It's like, damn, do I need all of this?
Mm.
We don't.
In addition,
So
some of those apps are breaking down into separate apps. Like Facebook is now Facebook and Facebook Messenger. Whoever made that decision to separate those two things, I hate them. Makes no sense to me. It's too much.
well, that's kind of how like I feel like it's brought people closer together and put them apart because like let's say for example, when you're in a long distance relationship, now is a time for long distance relationships to thrive. It's like amazing, right? But also at the same time, I think part of what kept long distance relationships maybe flourishing back, let's say 10 years ago, is that I didn't also know what my partner's doing. So let's say for example, I'm dating somebody that's in a different country, and they tell me that, oh hey, I'm just chilling indoors on AOL Messenger. There's no way for me to know that. But nowadays, and if I see that she's posted on like her Instagram or something like, oh, she's at a bar, that changes the dynamic relationship. All those little things now really change. So having a constant spotlight, it's almost like having a drone in the sky, and I know exactly what everyone's doing because there's an app for it. Like if you check in on Facebook and you've told me you're somewhere else, I'm like, wait a second. Like that's something I would have known before. So maybe for the most part, it's a double-edged sword. It's really, I think it's ultimately like social media hasn't made relationships either better or worse. This is how you use it can either destroy or bring you closer with certain relationships.
You think it makes people honest?
Well, yeah. So let me use my example because before my wife like moved in with me, we were in a long distance relationship. I was in one state and my wife was in another, like a neighboring state. And so to visit her, it took me like a 4 hour drive, 4.5 hour drive to get to her. So I would only see her every 2 weeks, just to like physically see her. And so we had to use technology to kind of not maintain, but more so enhance our relationship in the sense of, we still had that physical aspect of actually being there, and then to supplement that, I think that's the word that maybe we want to use, is supplement it to help us, just maintain that relationship, whether it be I can't remember what it was. I think it was like this app that we use that we just used to play like trivia something.
Words with friends, right?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe I won my wife over Words with Friends. I don't know, but it's. I think that, like I said before, it's not a substitute. Like technology isn't a substitute for real life interactions, but enhancement.
But do you think that with social media or just even the internet, it's causing people to kind of like be numb with human interaction then? Because like how
100%.
like how people would just interact in person is much different than how we would interact with social media. Like me and my buddies in our group chat, like we talk so much shit on there, and then when we all get together in person and hang out, it's like there's nothing to be said because everything we've said has been said on that chat. And I'm pretty sure it goes the same with relationships too. Like you kind of just lose that kind of that wanting of like wanting to talk to someone, and because you've already done it on the internet. So when you meet them in person, it's hard to kind of come up with something to talk about.
My relationship that I'm in now is very similar to John's in the fact that we both lived in separate states and had a 4 hour drive to each other to be able to see each other. During that time, it was the beginning of our relationship, the first year. We got a lot of our good conversation and like deep connection out through text. And when you run out of things to talk about, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because we were able to make a long distance relationship work because we both valued our alone time and respected that we had other things that we were doing. And that's something that we do now as well.
Yeah, so to answer, I guess, like Ricky's questions also, like social media I think has made those conversations that we're supposed to have in person already made. And so you can even kind of see that I guess whenever you go out, people are always on their phones. And I'm not saying that I don't do that because but if you look around, everyone's on their phones and they're just not really engaged one on one with a person. Um, and then in the fact of kind of like what you were mentioning, how you guys like talk shit in your group chat, and then when you guys meet up, it's just everything is said, so there's nothing really to talk about. And I guess it kind of just depends on like who you're with. If you're with a group of people that can just talk shit in and out no matter where they are, then that's what it is. But I think for the majority of people, it's kind of like that situation where everyone has already had that conversation, and when you meet up, like, what is there to talk about?
And especially when it comes to like just new relationships, like when you're trying to date someone too. I think with that, it's completely changed how people are trying to date each other or trying to get to know each other in a new way. Because now that everything's been said through like your messages or chats, it's kind of hard to kind of just get to know a person much more. I guess I can't find the right word, but I guess more intimately because everything's already been said. And I think and not just that, like we were saying before, like how everyone knows what we're doing at all times on social media if you're following the person and whatnot too. And then like there's just no more of that. I guess you could say there's just no more of that privacy anymore, like how the person in that video said.
Do you think that having this access um, to people at such a great depth has ruined relationships?
In a way, I think it has. This is just my perspective of it. Like, I think it's getting to know people about people, not know them, but getting to know about people so personally. And I think that's kind of like, everyone's just kind of making assumptions about people now.
Hmm.
For example, like there's musicians, for example, you see what they do and post on social media, and you kind of just assume like everyone's living or doing that kind of thing. I think Tad said this in your episode too, like how everyone's just flexing on the internet, so that's what you kind of just see. So you don't really see like the genuine person.
Hmm.
Yeah, people put more time into creating a persona rather than just being who they are. And that's something that's relatively new because social media is still relatively new. It's pretty much like only like maybe a little bit over a decade old, where we actually implement it into like the way we use it now in this form. I mean, Facebook and MySpace have always been around, but in terms of how we use it nowadays, this is still relatively new. And I think, like you were mentioning before, like especially with dating, like you do all this research prior to, let's say, for example, a date. So what are you going to talk about during the date when you already know that her favorite band is Metallica and she's into this anime and her favorite color is this? It's like that was something typically that you would ask or find out during that date, but you already, it's like having the answers to the test before you take the test. Now, when you take the test, you're just trying to pretend like you don't know the answers to it already. And I think that's kind of the part that has made dating a little bit more difficult, I guess you can say. But also, I think it's we're just in this excess mode nowadays where we just want extreme, we want everything and excess of everything right now to the point where it's even like even with like social like Instagram like specifically, it's like you can go, I can know something about, and there's some people that I feel like I'm friends with. I've realized I'm like, damn, I've never met this person actually in real life. That's kind of crazy that that's an actual thing. Like especially me, I'm into cosplay and stuff like that. So there are a lot of like people that I interact with and talk with on a daily basis that I've never met in real life. But I basically know everything about them, whether it's like actually physically talking to them, or just seeing what they post. I can get a feel for their personality, their likes, their dislikes, all that stuff, literally from an application. So, I mean, we're all guilty of it. The need to actually be like, do I need to meet this person in real life? Like, it slowly starts diminishing versus where you have that, because you need that longing to want to know something about somebody. That longing, once that goes away, I think humans tend to be like, okay, I don't really care to be around you. I'm friends with you, but it's like I don't have desire to be like, well, let's meet up anymore because I know everything about you that I could have learned by interacting with you over a period of maybe, a year or two, versus I found that out in maybe like 2 weeks from scrolling through your Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, whatever it is.
Now, do you
So
with the evolution of like the internet and technology overall, like even just hardware, this new generation of kids who are just growing up with all of this in their hands, pretty much, and unlike us, where we grew up and we saw everything get released and we had to learn how to use this. Kids are now growing up learning automatically how to use it. Like like our if you have like little nieces or nephews or kids in your lives, like they're picking up iPads and phones and swiping through the phones way better than how we were when we first learned how to use these tools. And a thought came across my mind where like with long distance relationships, as you guys were talking about, and do you guys think that there will be a time where like there's just because the relationship is just so far to where like I guess you could say like there's some sort of 3D hologram of that person, like you can FaceTime them and be
dude, that's what it's gonna. Sorry to cut you off. I'm
yeah.
like, that's what's gonna be needed, dude. I think, honestly, in my opinion, I think long distance relationships are not even doable nowadays because of I know exactly what you're doing. Think about how many, for example, like I mean, this may be a little bit controversial to say, but think about how many successful relationships or marriages that kind of had a few lies in there in the early years. That's kind of what goes on back in the day during long distance relationships. But certain things that could have been a fight or maybe an argument or I was being maybe dishonest about, you now can know if I'm lying or not. Like the whole Facebook check-in, the whole like Snapchat showing where exactly a person is, or Instagram story, all that stuff. None of that existed before. You could tell a person that, like, hey, I'm sitting here in bed watching a documentary when you're like fucking, like 7 shots in and you're in the middle of the club, and that person would never know. But now having this, like, it's not. I think it's one of those things where I think going back to what Emily said, is it making people more honest? I think there's a certain degree of, I wouldn't say ambiguity. I don't know the word to use for this, but like knowing everything sometimes is detrimental to a relationship. So I think we're in an age right now, we're in a transition where it's like, how do we manage this new form of relationship where we have an exorbitant amount of information about a person prior to even meeting them, or even if you did know the person, it's like you do need that space. So how do you have space from a person? You may not be physically there, but I know if I know what you're doing every single day, even if I'm not physically there, I'm basically there.
What's tough about that is that you want to be more honest because although it's not necessarily healthy, like you were saying, to know every single thing at all times, you almost would feel guilty, like your significant other was thinking that you're trying to hide something or whatever it may be, if you're not on the map and available to share your whereabouts at all times, because social media and platforms like that are trying to normalize everyone knowing everything about you. So it's almost like the double-edged sword. You can't be right.
Yeah, exactly. Like exactly, you said it perfect. Like, so if you are trying to hide where you are on an app that pretty much is about showing, your life, people are like, well, what are you hiding?
Right.
Like stuff. That's also the problem though, because we're used to knowing every single thing about what a person is doing. Like there've been times where I've been at a bar and I've been hanging out with my friends, be like, how is it? He's like, oh, I'll show you, and just like send him like a video through Instagram, like, yeah, it's kind of dead right now. Back in the day, it's like, show the fuck up and find out, you know stuff like that. And we're just so used to the point where now when you kind of want to have basic levels of like, I don't even know, like space or privacy, it's almost non-existent. So going back to Ricky's point of this whole hologram thing, that also has like positive and negative effects also as well too, because that would be something where you kind of have to always, I think it would be something that's a newly added thing to a relationship that can either be used in a positive way or a negative way. It's just like the whole people will be like, turn your camera on. It's like, oh shit. Well,
yeah. I bring that up because like FaceTime right now is like a huge deal in relationships now. Like my sister and her boyfriend, they're always on FaceTime too, and it's like. I would joke around with them like, are you guys like already sick of each other, seeing each other every day, through FaceTime and stuff like that? Like you're being so close to the person, yet there's no human contact to it. And I feel like with that kind of barrier, it makes us as people or just humans like just kind of numb to the idea that we can have this in front of us, but it's not really real. It's kind of like giving you a false truth or false identity of what relationships are, and like like I was saying, with all these new generation of kids growing up, they might not even realize like what they're feeling is actually, if it's instinctual, or is it just something that they kind of want because everyone's having so much information given to them through their phones. And yeah, and I just brought that up because I've seeing relationships now, it's just so different. The dynamics are so different. Like everyone's talking about, like, everyone wants an intimate relationship, like a physical and mental intimate relationship, but then at the same time, like with technology, it's kind of like just an invisible wall there, or like a glass ceiling there.
So what if, so we were talking about how this generation is kind of more tech savvy. So this I don't know if this has to do anything with technology, but don't they have pillows that light up whenever your partner or whatever is like sleeping? So you could kind of use that as kind of not an interaction, but just knowing that they're there. And then the point of like people being more technologically savvy like now. So, 10 years ago, none of this would be what it is. So if you let's maybe if we speculate 10 years from now, are we going to have kind of that hologram thing where everyone is just either having holograms of their significant other, or are we going to have this thing where people put on like a sleeve that it can replicate touch,
Yeah, like
and
it's
so
like it just simulates like a VR kind
yeah,
of thing, right? Yeah.
yeah, like, well, is that where the future of a relationship will go?
I mean,
I
it
feel
definitely
like that's
can.
it's cool and it would be maybe probably comforting for some people, but I would be terrified of that sleeve. Horrified. I would think it was gonna attack me in the middle of the night. I'm
Oh yeah, yeah. I
terrified.
mean, I guess you would have to like hit yes or consent to it, because you don't want to be like, touch the phone at like 2 a.m. in the morning and it's just
I'm
like, oh
sorry.
yeah, yeah, what's that
I
up my
just can't
butthole?
agree. If
Someone
we've come
touching it?
this far in technology, that thing's gonna attack me.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm
That
saying.
thing
Yeah, I
will
think.
become self-aware.
Oh well, that too. Yeah, but I think that's an AI issue that we could probably go on and about. But no, I think, yeah, I think that if we really look into 10 years from now, I don't even think that we would have to look at sci-fi to have an accurate, or not accurate, but a more plausible idea of how relationships will look like. Because so much has happened in those 10 years, like Tadiwa said, about how social media is very young. And so, with technology growing exponentially, I don't think we can fathom that.
Yeah, because you have to also remember that we're in a transition. Like there are kids that are being born into this, and they don't know of any other way of
Mhm,
existing, right? We know of how quote unquote used to be. That's the cliche "you're getting old" statement. Like, well, back in my day, like we're in that age now where things were significantly different 10, 15 years ago. But a kid that's 15 now, that's all he knows. Like you can literally meet somebody on an app now, and that's remember there used to be a taboo. Things like eHarmony used to be taboo. Online dating used to be very taboo. Like, wait, you met somebody on the internet, and then you meet them in person. Like all that stuff used to be odd, but now we have Tinder and stuff like that, where you can literally go to a city and then just keep swiping and find somebody, and you hook them that night, or and then roll on out. All that stuff is something that is being built now, and there are kids that are being born into this. So 10, 20, 30 years from now, the dating scene is going to be unrecognizable. So I guess for us to say whether it's getting better or worse, for the way we were raised, I guess we're slowly becoming incompatible with it, because we're still in that age where we're still in that mindset where we want to physically meet a person, and then the whole like who they are online is like an afterthought. Like I don't care what your Instagram's all about. I care about how you are when I talk to you and hang out with you and all that stuff.
do you think that we're the last generation of that whatever you had said, like
Yeah,
how,
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
do you think that
100%.
we're
Yeah.
the last generation of that?
Yeah, we're done. Like we're that 100%. Yeah, like everything else is going to be. We're in a very transitional state, just period. Whether it's just the way people think, the way people interact, like all that stuff is changing completely to the point now. It's like it's kind of hard to even interact with people without even having. There's a point in time where you could not have a cell phone and still maintain contact with your friends and stuff. Now it's virtually impossible. And then to add more to that, it's like now not having at least some sort of like social media, like the bare minimum Facebook, or having email, all that stuff. You have to kind of be on the grid. So I don't know how things are going to be in terms of like dating now, but I know that like especially online dating, have you noticed it's getting more and more specific? Before eHarmony used to just be about like everyone that wants to online date one database. Then it got very specific. Now it's like farmersmeat.com, and then there's like blackpeoplemeat.com, and then there's Grinder, then there's Tinder, and I saw one that was like Our Time, which is for like 50 and up. I'm like, Jesus. there, there is like it's getting more. There is like an app for everything. We used to joke about that, but that's an actual thing. There are apps for everything, so we're now just becoming. I guess there's a lack of interaction I have to do with a person. I can literally, if I have enough money, I can literally just sit in a chair all day and not have to interact with somebody and get my food. I can order all kinds of stuff and not have to interact. So we're basically get to a point where we're pushing ourselves away from each other and just looking more and more into our phones. And even
Not,
when it comes to like, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Ted. You brought up a great point of that, like how we're all connected, but physically we're pushing each other away. I wanted to bring up, like, do you think that's mentally and like even psychologically messing up all of us as people? Because we're seeing like this change in that, and I agree with that too. Like everything's at a touch of a button now, and like people have there's like a rise of just like mental health issues in our country too, and with social media being everyone's like talking and supporting each other, but at the same time you're not really getting a human interaction of support, and I don't know, I feel like it's giving you some sort of false sense of that. Like you think you're having like some sort of support or a relationship or any kind of emotion, but you don't have it because it's through your phone or it's through your tablet or whatever you're using. And with everything being so accessible too, I think that's caused a huge change in how we think and feel towards other people.
Yeah, so there was a podcast I was listening to. It was probably a few months ago about a psychologist, and he was talking about how when social media was introduced in I want to say 2010. Does that sound about right? Like Facebook started becoming really popular. Like depression rates started skyrocketing around that area that social media was introduced. And I really do think that social media does have a effect on mental health in terms of instant gratification or jealousy in the terms of like, oh, I want to be like that pretty, or I want to be over there hanging out on the beach with all this other people.
I think you're absolutely right because think before social media existed, nobody saw your photos. Like you would have photos that were on your phone and they were yours and yours only, or in a photo album at your house. And every single person who follows you on social media wasn't seeing every single one of those photos or the choice photos you cared to share, no matter how many people you tried to show it to. When you see there's people on social media who are getting hundreds of thousands of likes and it's like, man, I got 11 likes. It's sad, and it like, even you can't compare yourself, and I think people are getting more on board with that, and that's becoming more and more of a the mental health aspect of that. But there are people who take that so seriously and it's so important to them, so it can, I'm sure, very much affect them in their mental health.
There's also like the effects of how people see relationships on social media. Like the whole relationship goals kind of shit there. People fantasize like they only see the good things about relationships, but they don't want nothing to do with the up the downs of relationships either.
Yeah, you're just basically putting a highlight reel of like life. Like life is filled with ups and downs. So if you're pretty much only looking at the highlights of every single person's lives, like we're all gonna look glorious. And then all of a sudden, when you start seeing some of the negative things, that's why a lot of people are shocked when you hear about like, oh yeah, this person's a predator or this person's really into this, whatever, right? Like because we just put on very filtered versions of ourselves, and that became the thing. That filter, I don't know when it happened because I feel like it just happened in the blink of an eye, especially with Instagram. Because Instagram is the main culprit of a lot of this stuff. I feel like Twitter, I mean, it's more about people just posting their opinions and stuff like that, and Twitter's kind of just become a battleground for people just trying to argue with each other. Facebook, I think, kind of just died down, but Instagram became the thing where it's like, let me show you all the cool stuff I'm doing, but even though I'm not doing this all the time, I'm going to make it seem like that. So people start putting more effort into creating a persona than living in real life, and then it translates to relationships also as well too, or self-image, where like I think John was just saying, like how people are like, oh well, maybe I thought I was attractive, but I just saw a photo of fucking David Beckham. I'm like, oh man, I ain't shit now. Like all that constantly thrown in your face all the time is not having a positive effect on people's mental health and stuff like that because your standards become very unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
Not having good, high standards is anything wrong with that. No, but this whole idea that like there are perfect people is insane. No one's perfect, but there's some people that legitimately make money off of seeming perfect, and that's the wild thing about it. And then you have some people that like, just pretty much curate, like they are not even honest about like, certain things. Like for example, a lot of those models get all this crazy cosmetic surgery, or or maybe they're not taking even supplements that they're selling, but they're going to sell it to you, and then you're going to be sitting there and be like, okay, for me to look like that to get the validation that I now crave out of nowhere, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and it's just become a fucking shit show.
Yeah, it's crazy how like everyone needs some sort of self validation, and again with like how relationships are being seen too. Like I think people, like we grew up seeing like movies and stuff, like how Hollywood's made relationships look like it's very direct. It's just point A to point B to point C, and that's how it should look like, at least in the movies. But like I think people growing up now with social media being exposed to that, even on TV, like they make it seem like it's a very simple thing to do, and that's why like there's so many people are going in and out of relationships so quickly, and I think that's causing an effect too, where people are just kind of numb to relationships and how they really feel about other people. Now it's just like, oh yeah, I was dating this person last week, and now I'm like talking to someone else. It's so accessible now, and it's so quick to where like your emotions to even connect with someone is just like a switch. It's either you do or you don't, and just like Tinder, you just swipe left or right.
There was a quote that someone said in that video that you mentioned. It said like technology may modify the way that we meet our human basic needs, but it doesn't change our fundamental needs. And I think that having, like you said, like Tinder, like if we wanted to have like a sexual relationship with someone, all you have to do is swipe right and say a few words, and your fundamental need or basic need of sex is like it's completed, and so I think that.
Maybe we're streamlining things.
Say what?
We're kind of streamlining things, like certain things that maybe not don't need to be streamlined, and maybe that's why it's becoming more complicated than it originally was supposed to be.
Wait, so what do you mean streamline? Or like
Like,
like what or what things are being streamlined?
like the idea of Tinder, for example, is to pretty much make it easier to meet people. So back in I don't even know, like I keep saying back in the day, whenever this day was, but you know, you would have to meet random people and be like, oh, that person's cool, oh, that person's attractive. I'm gonna walk up to that person and
Mm.
then try to court them. Oh, talk to a girl. I think she's cute. Yada yada. Maybe it doesn't work out. Then I have to wait a period amount of time. Oh, that person is cool. So think about how long it took to meet random people, right? And then
Mm.
form a relationship with them. Tinder literally streamlines that. You could meet hundreds of people in one day. I don't know if I could meet hundreds of people in a year. So it's streamlined that process of having to, I don't know, go to the store, or even like the idea of like, remember like the idea of playing the field would be like you go to places to meet people physically. That's the whole point of the bar or a club. I'm going to go to a place to hang out, have a good time, and then maybe potentially meet somebody. Maybe a relationship will form. That's the whole concept of it. That now,
And
like,
now things like Tinder are so much easier that it's like going out to a bar, to a club, which first of all, I feel like is almost less desirable now. But if you're doing that, it's just to go out and have a drink or like have a good time. It's not always about meeting someone anymore because that just adds difficult. You can easily just get online and meet someone.
yeah, it's no longer needed. It's like I don't have to. I can sit there and find 20 other ways to meet someone. Now that's more like the setting just to meet the person you've already met online.
Hmm.
So now it's kind of taken the need to do certain things away, and it's just kind of made things super complicated. I think our generation is guilty of making dating complicated. I think that's what we do. I don't think we've ruined dating, but we've definitely made it exponentially more complicated because even social media now, there's like social media dating etiquette where it's like, okay, at what point, okay, you guys are now a couple. So at what point do you tell the world you're a couple by posting that status online? That's an important thing now. Like as dumb as it sounds, remember that's an important thing.
Yeah, people have
Some
like
people get
the need to tell the world like, oh yeah, we're
yeah,
officially in a relationship, and really
yeah.
you can kind of just keep that to yourself.
But official is a thing now, man. Like that's a thing that like I've legitimately gotten in trouble for not being Facebook official person, legitimately. And at first I didn't understand. I'm like, wait, what? Am I doing anything different than I was before? Before we used this Facebook official status, but for whatever reason, it's another requirement now due to the way social media's changed our perception of like dating and romance. Like if a person, like for example, you're dating like it's different between a person posting online, but like hasn't told the world we're a thing online. That's almost taken as like a offense. Like why aren't you telling the world? Well, I don't feel the need to. Why not? Because we're programmed now to be like we have to tell the world. So if you don't, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah,
I
so I
agree,
think
but only kind of, because I feel like that's almost, and I feel like I feel like we talked about this. I feel like it's almost, it's only a thing if you're someone who regularly uses social media. So the relationship I'm in now, been in for like a year and a half, and when I don't think we posted that we're in a relationship, social media, like I think like a month ago. I mean, maybe like 2 months. I don't know. Time all flows together right now, but and neither of us, I mean, we both use social media, but we don't really post. And I think we're both fine with that. Like, I don't think it bothered either one of us. So I think it totally depends on personality and on, I don't know, just the general vibe of your own relationship.
yeah,
No,
so
that's
I
true.
think so that's kind of um so my wife and I are kind of completely different in the sense of I don't really use social media to post anything. It's last time I probably posted on Instagram was probably 2016. So it's been 4 years. Why I still have it, I don't know. But my wife is like the complete opposite. And she likes to post stuff every now and then. And, she does it because she wants it as a memorabilia type of thing that she can always look back on. And she posts a lot of stuff, you know, that we do stuff together, and she always posts that, and I don't post it. Do people know that we're in a relationship? Yeah, the people that need to know that we're in a relationship and that we're married. That's, to me, that's all that matters. Like I don't personally care if other people don't know. If you don't know, then go back to the whole thing of just asking me.
That's
Hmm.
true. I just said like I just realized now like it's for the most part. I guess it depends on like the relationship, relationship you're in. But I've
Yeah.
seen it's definitely a thing now where I'm like aware of it. Like sometimes, like yeah, some people that is important to them, especially if you have a big social media
Hmm.
present, where it's like they were like, well, why aren't you telling other people? But if it's like one of those things where like you and your partner definitely are like, it's almost like if you have an agreement, then yeah, it doesn't matter at all. But it's a very strange phenomenon now that's like it's had an impact on dating, which is I don't even know when it happened, but definitely has a presence.
With social media being available to everyone, seeing everyone's relationship, there was one case that happened, I believe, last weekend where Will Smith and his wife, their relationship is on blast on the internet because of what
Oh yeah,
happened. I think the guy's name was like August
August
Alsina.
Alsina. Yeah,
Yeah,
like a R&B singer.
yeah, like their relationships on pretty much in the public to everyone, and this whole idea of like an open relationship kind of deal, because that's what everyone's kind of aiming at right now against Will Smith. I think he's been denying it, but like there's so many memes and comics, stand-up comics, that talking about it, like how Will Smith is just, if it is true, then it's just kind of like he just let it happen. Like the I guess you could say like just relationships itself. It's so different because of social media now, and everyone just knows about it, and it's kind of like where you're just kind of accepting of it. It's just there's no more of like of that taboo sense to it, where it's like, whoa, okay, that's not right. Like everyone now is just like, oh, okay, then it's whatever now. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Like, do you think with this change too, that's causing like a shift in how relationships are being made into like open relationships, or even like what's the word, like polygamy, where like just more than one person?
well that's a whole different ballgame.
So
But
you had mentioned that on our podcast. It's something about like how maybe like I don't want to say we are, but maybe we're transitioning to a polygamous state. Is that what you
well,
said?
more but I'll say more hedonism is becoming something that more people are considering now because for example, like there are some psychologists that argue that human beings are not meant to be monogamous. We're not. That's something that has been. It's a social construct. Like being monogamy itself is a social construct where we just decided that one partner per person. But we actually specifically males were designed to spread our seed. So the most efficient way would be have multiple partners. But we have just created a social construct where we kind of just have it's like one partner for whatever reason, and it is what it is. I think nowadays people might be going back to that because people have separated love in the physical sense and love in the mental sense. Like for example, there's some people like for example you can be in love with somebody, right? But doesn't necessarily they are feeling that mental need, like that caring. They physically take care of you. They do all these things, but that doesn't mean that that love doesn't translate to them maybe physically pleasing you in terms of like sexual needs and stuff like that. And then that's when the idea of this hedonistic thing has come into now, where some people, for example, love each other, but their physical needs might need to be met by somebody else or multiple partners. Their heart and mind are still with their partner, but in terms of the physical love, I guess with the agreement with their partner. I don't know. I mean, I'm not in an open relationship, so I wouldn't know, but their physical needs can be met by somebody else. But that's something that I think is a relatively new idea, and I don't know what the success rates with it, but it's something that definitely is no longer. It's becoming less and less taboo.
It makes me so upset. I'm a big believer in being with and being in love with and giving your whole self to one person, at least one person at a time, because I just truly feel that you can be in love with someone and not have that person be who you're supposed to be with. I feel like if you can't get all of the needs that you have from a relationship from one single person and you can't give everything to that person, that it's okay to have had feelings for them, but they're probably not who you're supposed to be with, and there probably is someone better out there for them and for you. So I can't understand. I just can't. I can't understand being in a relationship with multiple people, because why would you want to prevent that connection with one person to have all of that? So many people do have it, and yeah, there's people who think that they have it and then it falls apart or whatever, but so many people do have that connection. I just feel like that's something you should strive for. People shouldn't settle for less, or for, oh well, I can get some things from some people, because someone's always missing out on something that way. I feel really strongly about this, obviously.
So I guess, I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to play like devil's advocate in the sense of, maybe there's something that I physically can't do. Let's say, you know, like my dick doesn't work. And so, but I like, I love my partner, and, she still has desires. And so the only way we can do this,
True.
to please her is to have someone else as a quote middleman.
Mm.
So, if
Okay,
you looked
but
at,
you said your wife still has desires. Did she not vow to love you in sickness and in health?
mm,
See that? I mean, that's the thing I would say about the idea of marriage is that like it depends on your interpretation of marriage, because some people look at marriage as a more possessive thing, and some people look at marriage in terms of like a union in terms of like mind and soul. So the most
mm,
important part when it comes to like marriage is that like you have my heart in mind. I know the physical is there's an emphasis on the physical part, but there is an argument to be made that like it's not as important as having a heart. Like for example, when people like let's say for example someone is unfaithful to their partner. Typically, the reason why typically you see the two forms of that. I tend to think that it's more hurtful when someone is like in a relation, falls in love with somebody else, or it's like been emotionally, unfaithful versus the physical, because the physical things were very sexual creatures. So when it comes to like marriage and things of that nature, it's not saying that like I want to just fuck you forever. Like that's not what marriage is. Marriage is about like you have my heart and soul. So if the emphasis, I guess, in your interpretation of it is that includes the physical, like even if I'm not able to please you, you have to deal with it. That's where people, I guess, kind of like start. I guess that's where people like even nowadays, kind of like even talking about the idea of like, is marriage needed? Because some people, for example, like Don Cheadle has been with the actor Don Cheadle who plays War Machine, and Avengers. He's been with his partner for over 16 years. They're not married,
what?
but yeah, they're not married. Yeah,
Oh
his
shit.
kids, yeah, they're just together for 16 years, and they've been successful with it. So technically, marriage is not a require. It's not a requirement for it's not a requirement for a successful relationship. It's about being willing to fulfill your partner's needs no matter what. That could be also an argument where it's like I'm trying to fulfill your needs. I love you so much. I want your needs met.
I
So
can see where you're coming from, but I also want to go back to you said mind and soul or something to that effect.
yeah,
Um, and again, I do think it's a matter of personal opinion and how certain people view certain things. So, like, obviously, I'm very passionate about this. And to the point where when you said mind and soul, I was like, you forgot body. Like it's mind, body, and soul to me, and that's how it always has been in my brain.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, because we remember I think it's the thing is we've evolved into this mindset and we may evolve past it. Like, marriage is not going to just be like this forever.
Do you think that's because of like the use of technology within relationships too? Like just being, like I was saying earlier, just like being kind of just numb to the idea of like the whole physical intimacy with that too, and people just making it so easily accessible with just like social media. Like I don't want to make it seem like I'm blaming social media for like relationship issues, but
Oh no.
like it's a big part of relationships now, and you know we're old enough to know like how to have relationships before and after social media, but there may be listeners out there who will never know that difference, and to kind of just show like you know with this change of like how relationships are being seen with social media too, and just how people are interacting and changing their ideas of it. Do you think it's causing or do you guys think that with this kind of technology is it causing that kind of rift in relationships like that to make people think like you know marriage isn't, you know, we don't need that, or it's okay to have multiple partners and stuff like that?
So I think it also kind of depends on like what we mentioned in the earlier part of the episode. You know, everyone's definition of love is different, and so, you know, maybe my love or my definition of love is a happy marriage, and you know, the other definition of love for Don Cheadle is just being there for your partner. You know, it. I don't know if social media desensitizes that whole personal effect, but maybe that's just a product of the generation.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just it depends on your definition of love. I think it's more about syncing your definition of love to the person you want to spend the rest of your
Mm.
life with, versus going with a like Webster dictionary definition of it and it's abiding by it.
Yeah.
Because everything is evolving. I think our generation is now. I think the thing that I think is really interesting, we're now allowed to question whether things that have been around for a while are the best way to go forward. And even the idea of unions and all those things, stuff like that. Like union is something that's like a bond between two people, right? That definition is allowed to evolve if it no longer suits the time we're living in, you know. And I think that that's what we're seeing right now. So it's not like social media is completely destroying relationships. I think right now it's almost like when you go to the gym, you break down your muscles to build them back up. So I think right now we're seeing things being deconstructed,
Oh
and then maybe
shit.
in 10 years or so, it's going to be built up into something new in its new form. And then that'll be broken down and then built into something new. So we're just adding on things to it. So I don't
Yo,
think anything is completely being taken off, but it's just being added on, like a DLC for a new video game.
yo, that was a nice comparison. I kind of like that. Like the whole muscle thing, like breaking it down, and then not necessarily breaking it, but more so of creating a new dynamic. Is that the word that we want to use?
It's like it's just pretty much you gotta just look at what's been working. It's like if I want to get stronger, I have to pick up heavier weight. So right now, if we want relationships to work differently, we have to do different things. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. Right now, we're confused. So we're like, wait, what the fuck is all this? You got fucking, I can press a button and get that person over here in 2 seconds. All this stuff is brand spanking new, just like if you're in a brand spanking new like training regime, but your results are going to be different because you're trying to evolve past what you currently are with. And I think it's how you use social media. Right now, I think we're in that phase where we're excited, we're just doing too much, and that's why you see the negative effects. Like people are just more focused on creating the ultimate persona, because like there's some people like that you may end up dating someone's persona. You're not even dating the actual person, and then you meet the person in real life, like holy shit, you're not what you used to be, or you're not what I thought you were. But I think all that's going to go away eventually once we're out of this whole like I guess excitement phase of just trying to figure out this new thing. Because I think in 10 years, this conversation we're gonna be having right now is gonna be obsolete. Something new is gonna be done.
So you think it'll be like normalized then, pretty much, like within the next
100%.
couple of years?
I think, man, yeah, give it like 5, 10 years, man. I think that's gonna be like, because old school dating is already obsolete now. Like where it's already like done. Like our way of meeting strangers, all that stuff, man. You catch a case doing that, going up to random people. The supermarket can be like, hey, I think you're beautiful. Want to go on a date? That can be harassment now. Like that
True.
stuff is changed,
That's actually funny that you say that, because now I think about it, I met my wife like actually going to a party. Like I didn't meet her through like social media needs. Now I think about it. And
Yeah.
so, damn, are we like, we
How
really
many
are
years
like the
ago was
last.
that?
What's up?
How many years ago was that?
Oh damn! Don't let my wife hear this. I want to say that was like
I'm sorry.
4 or 5 years.
Okay, so
2016. Yeah, so 4 years ago.
then we can say 4 years later, like I'm perfectly comfortable with the fact that I met my current boyfriend on Tinder. There are certain people I wouldn't want knowing that, like my parents,
Uh,
because they just wouldn't take it well. But
yeah.
like 4 or 5 years ago, would you have been comfortable telling people like, "Oh, we met on an app"?
Yeah, people lie about that. I think even still now.
Wait, oh,
So
people
even
definitely
now,
do, yeah.
you
But I
think
feel
even
like
now?
now it's a little more normalized.
Mm,
Yeah,
Yeah, now I
it's
think
more
Tinder is
accepting
okay,
now
man.
for sure. But I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
like what you
Tinder's
guys are
definitely.
saying, like 5 years ago, it would have been, like you really met someone through an app, like that you would have been interrogated because of that.
It's almost dangerous seeming, which now it almost seems safer to meet someone online first.
Yeah, it's almost
that's
like
crazy.
even the idea of how we live. Remember, our parents used to get married first, then move in. Now we're like, fuck it, we're gonna live together, then get married. Oh shit, it didn't work out. All right, move out and then try it again. Like we, we switch everything up. Like that's one thing. Like even like my parents and I we disagree. My parents are like, no, you need to get married first before you move in. But I look at it from a logical standpoint. I'm like, wait, I don't know this person. Wouldn't you want to live with the person first and then be like, let's get married? Because I'm looking at it from a logical standpoint. You look at the compatibility and then be like commitment. But people are more like commitment and then check out the compatibility.
Mm.
So things are just changing completely. So I don't even know what this generation is doing. Now this generation is doing a complete background check before you even hang out. So I don't know what's happening now to the point where it's going to be like you got to go through 15 different like because I know there are like I've seen like legitimate like podcasts where like people will be like, all right, I checked this person's Facebook, their Instagram, and yet I'm like, damn, so you went through their life before you even decided to grab a beer with this person,
Well, it's
and
kind
that's
of
just
convenient. It's kind of
it is.
it's like you said, it's streamlining. Like if you're scrolling through someone's Facebook or Instagram that you thought you were interested in and is trying to get you to come hang out and they're like, "Oh, hey, meet us at the bar this, weekend," and you
Okay.
scroll through their Instagram and find out they're going to Coyote Joe's every weekend and country isn't your jam, then it's like, I don't know if I really want to do that. And you already know you don't even have to waste the time. I mean, waste of time is really harsh, but like you don't have to be subject to an evening that you aren't gonna like because you can kind of guess like, this isn't gonna be my thing.
Do you think, okay, so I hate to keep dragging this on, but do you think that because we don't have that kind of like rejection, well, I guess we do, but that in-person rejection of, like we keep saying this old school way, but now that we talk about it more and more, it might actually be old school. The old school way of like meeting someone, going on a date and not knowing about them and being rejected, not having that experience, is that going to be like obsolete now just because you can cut that in the butt before you even meet them? You're like, oh hey, I don't really like this person, swipe left. Or if you do end up like swiping right and you're like, oh, I don't really feel this person, you can just stop talking to them. So that whole interaction of rejection is not even going to be a thing anymore.
I think it's just like how
Get it?
people interpret it too, because like some people will take rejection on social media and not recognize it, but versus like in person where someone will be like, oh, get the fuck away from me, like you can
Hmm.
physically
Yeah.
and you can see their body language with that, but on like on the internet, I don't know. I think it really depends on like how people just handle it. Like for me, I read it as if like if I'm left on scene, then that's like okay, then I'm not gonna keep pursuing it. But then like I don't know. I think it really just depends on the person.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I mean, being left unseen is like being the equivalent of in a club trying to wave somebody over. They look at you and then just look the other way. They're like, nah. That's really what it
that
is.
that or like you ask someone to like dance and then she says no, and then some other guy comes behind you and she says, hey, you want to dance? He says yeah.
Yeah, that's basically that means you responded to that guy. That's what it is. So you got left unseen. She said no, and then she responded back to that guy. Hey, what's up? And whatever it is called now. What is it like the plum thing that people send nowadays?
uh
Whatever.
like the emoji, like the
Oh, the
cucumber,
eggplant.
what is that? Eggplant.
Yeah, the eggplant, yeah, the eggplant emoji. So that's basically what it is. Like it's just streamlining everything. It's just like with movies and stuff like that. Back in the day, we had Blockbuster. Go to a store, pick out your movie, then get in your car, go back. Then we're like, fuck that, red box now. Now we're going to go to these random boxes, press the button, and then get that. Now we're like, no, that's way too much. Now we have Netflix. Now we're like, I'm not even leaving my place. And then now it's going to get to a point where we're going to have eye contacts. We're not even going to have to even press the button. We're just going to download stuff to our brains.
Mm. I think the title of the episode should be "Relationships Are Like Gyms" or "Relationships Are uh, like movies, movie streaming services." I like that.
Yeah, I'll definitely make that the title for sure. So I want to thank you guys again for being on this episode. I've had a great time just talking to you guys about this, and you guys have really great insight on just this topic alone, and I really hope that the listeners do check out your episode on this topic too. Now, was there anything you guys like to plug in or shout out before we wrap things up here?
Yeah. So our social media, we have an Instagram. It's at Puzzled Minds Podcast. Our Twitter is Puzzled Minds Pod, and our Gmail is or email. I don't know why I say Gmail. Our email is puzzledmindspodcast@gmail.com, where we do encourage anyone and everyone to submit a topic that we can talk about later on in the week. So that's really all our social media plugs, I guess. Oh, and then I guess you can find us on all major streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, whatever the hell you listen to.
All right, so this is episode 58. Thank you guys again for being on the podcast here. Make sure you guys check out Puzzled Minds Podcast. And I can't wait to collaborate with you guys again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll maybe we'll do an episode on anime because I see that you weeb gang, so might have to do something like that, or cartoons.
Yeah, for sure. Because I know with this past weekend was Anime Expo and Aniplex too, so I was pretty big on that.
Oh shit. How was that in terms of like the whole social distancing thing?
Well, I haven't been to a convention in a long time, so to me it was pretty cool just to see the panels, even though they're like pre-recorded. It was just cool to see the panels and stuff. But yeah,
Wait,
I
you
hope.
said pre-recorded, like in terms of like they weren't there, so they just had a TV.
Yeah, like they were. It's kind of like they kind of like just had the panels recorded beforehand and then just like played it and then went on to the next thing.
Oh, okay, I got you. Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, like that was for like the Aniplex one, the Anime Expo one. There was some that was like that. There's some were live, like they were taking questions on Twitter. Some were not, so it was like a mix of both.
Yeah, I got you. We'll definitely reach out to you and because I think we're eventually want to do a cartoon one. I don't know exactly when we'll do that, but yeah, we should definitely collaborate sometime soon.
Yeah, for sure, man. And again, thank you guys for being on the podcast. And for the listeners, make sure you check out Puzzled Minds Podcast and make sure you to like, share, subscribe to Spoiler Force Podcast too. And all of you guys have a great night.
Oh, you too. Thanks for having
Stay
us.
puzzled, man.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow, like, share, subscribe, and rate Spoiler Force Podcast. For comments, questions, or criticism, you can email me at rickyvang92@gmail.com or message me on Instagram at instagram.com/rickyvang92.